book lovers, it is G-Swizz here, and I am here today with the end of year tag. If I sound a little bit congested, it's because one nostril is blocked and then the other one I can breathe through just fine. I'm having a weird moment at the moment. It's probably because of how much rum I've drunken recently. So I like to do this tag every year around October because October is the beginning of the final quarter of the year, and I think this is the time we should start reviewing some goals and some challenges that we've set for ourselves, as well as kind of like look at what could potentially be our favorites. I think I have discussed in TBR videos as of recently that I want to look for a few more favorites to add to my top 23 list, and so a tag like this kind of helps me review what could potentially make that list, but also look at some other things that I want to complete that might just surprise me by the end of the year. Additionally, before I proceed, I should also mention that I do have a lozenge in my mouth. If I'm lisping at any point, it is because I need this in order to help me breathe and to just soothe what's going on here. So I apologize. I usually never like to film when I have gum in my mouth or lozenges, but I'm just doing this because I kind of need to at the moment. I have enjoyed doing this tag previous years and I can't wait to do it today, so let's discuss. I guess without further ado, let's get straight into these tag prompts. So prompt number one is, are there any books that you started this year that you need to finish? Now, I don't often DNF books, but when I do, I don't like to talk about it because I never want to be held accountable for the books that I DNF. I don't know, it's just not my thing. I don't like recording the books that I DNF. And I think it's because I always associate DNFing with people updating their Goodreads from the very first page and then just keeping it on their Goodreads until they just DNF the book and it's just there kind of haunting them. I don't know, I just prefer to forget about DNFs. At this point, I can't think of any books specifically that I've picked up and put down. However, that all being said, I do have a few series that I do have to mention. First of which being the Faded Fae series by Ella Fields. If you guys don't know, Ella Fields is an Australian author who writes romantasy. I did read Kingdom of Villains from them earlier this year, and I did enjoy Kingdom of Villains. The Savage and the Swan, however, which is the first book in the Faded Fae series, I found it to be okay. It was a little bit weird. It grew on me eventually, but I don't know. I do believe that the morally gray love interest was very interesting, and his intentions were something I wasn't really expecting. However, I think for a story like his, he deserved like a full series, and I believe that his and the protagonist's love story should have been expanded upon. I really struggle with standalones sometimes, especially when there's a morally gray romance like this. I think that it just needed to be drawn out a little bit. With the Faded Fae series, this is a companion series, so I believe we're following two other characters, at least for the second half of the series, because this is a duet, and I'm a little bit nervous about this one because I think based on the first one, I'm not too sure how I will take this morally gray romance. I'm not too sure if it's going to have the same tone or if the love interest is going to be just as or maybe even more morally gray. I just think that with morally gray love interests, they need a little bit more time to be fleshed out. So I can fully understand why the protagonist and the love interest are fully compatible with each other despite everything going on. A bit nervous about continuing on with the series, but I do want to eventually. So I might just complete it for the sake of completing it and adding it to my completed series of 2023. I'm doing pretty well with my completed series of 2023 at the moment. I honestly cannot wait to see how many series I complete by the end of the year. The second book series I have to mention that I might want to complete this year is the Entangled with Fae series by Tessandra Odette. I have read the first 4 books in this companion series, and I do want to read A Dream So Wicked, and a big reason why I have not yet read it is because I collect these books in hardback, and for some odd reason, Amazon are not listing the hardback. Even the author has tried reaching out to Amazon to list the hardback for sale, but for some reason they're not bending, and it's not just an Australia thing. I thought that it was an Australia thing. No, it's happening internationally as well, and that is probably the most affordable way I could get the hardback, because everywhere else the hardback is like over 60 Australian dollars, whereas if I was to go through Amazon, usually a print on demand hardback would be 50 or under. So I was fully expecting to pay $50 for this hardback, but I didn't want to pay like more for a hardback that was under 500. So I have been waiting for this hardback to make its way to Amazon. on, and it just hasn't. I don't know, I might order it from Waterstones eventually with my next Waterstones order. Maybe I might listen to it on audiobook. I believe that these books are a fun time. I really enjoyed A Taste of Poison, which was the 4th book in the series, and I think it has definitely put me in the mood to continue with the series and to finish it finally. This is a Sleeping Beauty reimagining, and I love the concept of this one specifically because the villain of this Sleeping Beauty reimagining just so happens to be some sort of like dream or nightmare person, and they happen to be the love interest. And I honestly cannot wait because it's given me Strange the Dreamer vibes, and I have always kind of wanted something like this out of a Sleeping Beauty reimagining, so I honestly cannot wait to read this one. And the final series I have to mention for this prompt would be Lovelight Farms. I did not start Lovelight Farms this year. I technically started it in December of last year, but I do want to proceed with the series. I do want to reread Lovelight Farms specifically, and then I want to move on to the rest of the books. I just find that the series starts off on a very interesting note. The Christmas book in the series just so happens to be the first book, and I believe the other books in the series are not holiday themed. So I do find that this series starts off in a very non-traditional way. Like with the Bromance Book Club series, for example, the Christmas book was like the 5th book in the series, you know? There are some other holiday themed romances that are within series that don't tend to be the first book, but with Lovelight Farms, it's a different situation. So that's a big reason why I did not continue on with the series during the December period last year, because all I was focusing on was like holiday themed reads at the time. But this year, I want to change that. I do want to read Lovelight Farms a little bit earlier, like before December, and then continue on with the rest of the series. So then I have completed the series and I can see what the hype is about, because Lovelight Farms was okay, but I'm hearing that the romances in the other books are so much better. And I think that might be because the first book has a friends to lovers dynamic that doesn't have a dual POV. That could be why. Prompt number 2 for this tag is, do you have an autumnal book to transition into the end of the year? No, because here it's spring. Yes, I might have a cold right now, but it's gonna be like really hot here very soon. So I usually answer this prompt to be inclusive of my hemisphere and what's going on here. So I'm gonna choose something that's a bit more springy, and I'm gonna mention Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. It honestly took me a while to figure out what could be like springy enough. Like even with some of the contemporary romance that I have on my romance shelves, I honestly cannot tell like whether or not they will be spring themed or related. I mean, I could do my research. I could actually look at all the synopses. But Forget Me Not feels very springy because florists and weddings, often I'm finding that weddings are taking place during spring, and flowers, I don't know, it's just the flower vibes, it's the wedding planning vibes. Also, my Illumicrate edition just looks extremely springy. Let me just show you for a second. How could you get more springy than this? Like, look at that. Look at all these beautiful flowers. That for me screams spring, even though the colors are cooler than usual. The original cover, yes, has a pink cover, which seems a little bit more on brand for spring, but my Afterlight Special Edition still does the trick. Prompt number 3 of this tag is there a new release you're still waiting for? I have 3 I have to mention for this because I can't just choose one. First of all, Hunt on Dark Waters by Katie Robert. This is a traditionally published book by Katie Robert that involves pirates and involves witches, and I believe that this book is a romance between a pirate and a witch, and in Katie Robert fashion, it's gonna be steamy. So I'm looking forward to this one, especially because I appreciate Katie Robert's humor. I don't just love her books because I enjoy the way that she writes steam. I very much appreciate her books because I love her humor. I follow her on social media. She's just hilarious, and she is just like one of those people I stan so hard. The next anticipated release that I've put on this list is Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. This is the second book in the Empyrean series, and it's the sequel to Fourth Wing. I am looking forward to the second book. I don't know how Rebecca Yarros is going to be able to draw the series out personally. Like, it excites me that this is going to be a 5-book series, but I don't know what Rebecca Yarros is exactly setting up. I don't know if we're gonna follow Vi the entire time. Violet? Sorry, it's been a few months. I do like following her, and I do love the love interest. I do love what's going on for them, but I don't know how she's gonna draw it out for 5 books. So we're gonna see how this is gonna go. I'm really hoping there's a good reason why this is gonna be a 5-book series instead of a trilogy or a duology. I don't remember how long the series was going to be initially. I'm a little bit nervous right now, but I'm also very excited because this book series gives me all the nostalgic vibes. I was literally talking about this with a work colleague like the other day. They finally read it. They're like, oh my goodness, your Divergent loving self, your inner 18-year-old would have been so happy to read Fourth Wing. I could see it. And I'm so happy she could finally see it because she finally read it. Like, as much as it's not perfectly written, like, it feels as if it was written in a similar writing style to the Crave series by Tracy Wolff, and I still enjoy that writing style. It's kind of addictive for me personally. I still appreciate this book series so much because it feels so nostalgic, and it very much reminds me of the first Divergent book. And the first Divergent book is what got me into reading. So 18-year-old G-Swizz is so excited for the rest of the series. But also 27-year-old G-Swizz is as well. And the third and final new release I'll mention for this prompt is Betting on You by Lynn Painter. This is Lynn Painter's next young adult contemporary romance story, and I am so here for it because it is giving me Better Than the Movies vibes. This book comes out in November. I just know that this is just going to give me all the positive vibes I need for the end of the year. It has been a rough 2023, and so I am just hoping that this book will just bring me back to life. I mean, technically I'm not dead, I'm just like a zombie at the moment. I mentally feel like that, but you know, with Lynn Painter, Better Than the Movies just gave me so much positive adrenaline. I loved it so much, and the do-over was just so fun to read. I know that the do-over should have been like 50 pages more. We could have had more romantic development, but it was still a very enjoyable story. So I reckon that Betting on You is going to do the trick because the page count for Betting on You is up there with Better Than the Movies. So I'm excited for it. Prompt number 4 is, what are 3 books you want to read before the end of the year? So I want to read the Fallen World trilogy by Laura Falasa by the end of the year. I have mentioned this in a couple of TBR videos already. I specifically want to read this series, not just because Laura Falasa is one of my favorite authors ever. I also want to read it because I want to see whether or not it will make my top 23 books / series of 2023 list. I am still on the hunt for some good books / series, and I reckon this series has the potential to make the list. And also, I very much appreciated the Four Horsemen series by Laura Falasa, and even though these book series aren't connected in any way, this is another post-apocalyptic series that Laura Falasa has written. It's not in the Bargainer world, so I'm a little bit sad about that. However, I do want to read something that's like completely fresh and written by Laura Falasa because she just has a very comforting writing style for me personally. I just love going into her books and feeling invited. I don't know, I feel invited every single time I start reading one of her books. Her books are just so inviting. Apologies in advance if I use that word to describe Laura Falasa's books going forward, but that is exactly how I feel. The second I'll mention is This Cursed Light by Emily Thied. This is the second and final book in the Las Fenestra series. I mean, from what I know so far, this series has not been extended, and this will be the conclusion. I'm a little bit nervous about this one, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm really happy that the author and the publisher pushed this book out by a few months. I believe it was initially meant to come out between July and August of this year, but it ended up getting pushed out to the beginning of December. So I'm really happy that the publisher allowed Emily Thied to have an extension on finishing this book. I'm really hoping that this book delivers on every level that I want it to. I'm really nervous about it because I really loved This Vicious Grace the first time that I read it. So I'm just hoping, fingers crossed, this book ends off on the note that I want it to end off on and it feels full as a story because I'm really nervous about how this is gonna feel. I don't want it to be rushed, that's all. And the final book I have to mention for this prompt is The Blood Gift by N.E. Davenport. I've been putting this book off for a while. However, I recently read Forged by Blood, which has pretty similar themes, and while reading it, I was like, oh my goodness, this reminds me so much of the Blood Trials. I need to pick up The Blood Gift. I'm really happy that I picked up Forged by Blood because if I didn't recently read Forged by Blood, I don't think I would have the recent motivation to pick up The Blood Gift. I don't think I'm gonna reread The Blood Trials, and a big reason why I don't think I'm gonna reread it at this time is because I loved The Blood Trials a lot. Once again, it's another book that reminds me of Divergent and the Dauntless Initiation Trials. Like, I really love that part of Divergent. It feels so nostalgic. The Blood Trials has that, but it's a lot more gruesome. I just kind of remember almost everything that happened in the Blood Trials, and I would want to reread it. However, I'm hearing that The Blood Gift is not as good. So if I binge read the 2 books, if I read the Blood Trials first, and if I go into the Blood Gift having the expectation that it's going to be just like the Blood Trials, then I might be disappointed. I have been hearing from many reviewers that the blood gift is not as good, and I am really nervous about that. And that played a massive part in why I did not pick the blood gift up in its release month, because it was one of my most anticipated releases of this year, and I have not yet read it. But I have to give it a try eventually. I have to read the blood gift, and I hope that I do enjoy it. I am going to go into it with the expectation that I'm not going to love it as much as the first book. But that being said, I'm not going to reread the first book in the lead up to the blood gift, because I don't want to have those expectations that it's going to be like incredible and amazing. Prompt number 5 is there a book you think could shock you and become your favorite book of the year? Honestly, at this point, I am so confident with the series that I have as number 1 that personally I believe that the only book series that could beat it in being my favorite book series of the year is something that has been written by the same author. So at the moment, my favorite book series of the year is the War of Lost Hearts series by Carissa Broadbent. This book series is so special to me. The War of Lost Hearts series was not just an emotional series for me personally because of its romance and because of how much character development the characters go through, or because of like the character death that happens. No, it's the theme. It's what's going on in the world. The War of Lost Hearts deals with such tough topics that are so applicable to this world and what's going on. And it has such a powerful message. It is incredible. So I think the only book series that could defeat this book series in being the champion for the year is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent, and that series, or the Night Duet. I personally believe out of all the book series that I have on my TBR, this is probably the only book series this year that can dethrone The War of Lost Hearts. But I also, at the very same time, don't believe that it will. Not just because I'm not sure whether or not I will read it by the end of the year, but also because The War of Lost Hearts, it's one of those series that doesn't really mess around. Like, I'm not saying that the Serpent and the Wings of Night series messes around. It's just, I kind of expect that the Serpent and the Wings of Night will focus a lot more on the romance and vampiric politics and like paranormal politics and stuff, whereas the War of Lost Hearts is a little bit more different. Like, yes, there's a magic system in the War of Lost Hearts, and there are fae, but it seems to be a little bit more grounded in reality. I'm not saying that Serpent and the Wings of Night is not grounded in our reality whatsoever, but it just gives me different vibes. And I am so looking forward to reading that book series, and this is not me like discriminating it whatsoever, but I specifically fell in love with The War of Lost Hearts because it felt so real. And I honestly don't mean to downplay what could potentially happen in The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I am looking forward to that series. However, my experience with The War of Lost Hearts was just one I don't think can be topped, at least for this year. Maybe if I was to distance myself from the initial reading experience, maybe I would be able to pick a new favorite. But because I read it in the second half of this year, in August, I personally believe that The War of Lost Hearts will take the cake. But Serpent and the Wings of Night, considering that it was written by the same author, Carissa Broadbent could do it again. And she could top my 2023 favorites list off with another series, but I, at the moment, highly doubt it. I am very confident in The War of Lost Hearts at the moment. And that being said, I am planning to read Serpent and the Wings of Night eventually. I have colleagues asking me every week if I have read it yet, and I'm telling them, no, I'm saving it for a time where I think that it's appropriate. And because I know myself pretty well and I know how I get when it comes to like book hangovers and stuff, I trust that I'm going to read this book series at the right time. And last but certainly not least, the final prompt of this tag is, have you started making reading plans for 2024? It's really difficult to make reading plans for 2024, especially when things have been hectic within this final third of the year. I believe ever since like halfway through August, things have just not been great in terms of how hectic life has been and my mental state, like how I've been able to keep up with that. I am going to be honest, unless of course like life turns up and I'm able to get like my balance back. I don't know if I am going to be able to complete as many books or as many challenges as I've completed in 2023. So I'm just being like a little bit realistic. But I mean, we will see how things go. But I did make a few plans. I mean, obviously I want to read more manga. Like I always want to read more manga. I definitely want to read more like within series. I've really been enjoying manga binge reads as of recently. I remember one of these months I binge read 4 volumes of The King's Beast. There's so many other manga series I want to binge read, like Alice in Borderland and One Punch Man. There's just so much on my TBR. I want to continue to prioritize binge reading backlist manga because as much as I've been enjoying following manga at like the latest volume and like consistently keeping up with series. It's fun. I love doing that. But I also want to go back and binge read a bunch of other backlist manga series that I have on my TBR because, yeah, I have a lot that I need to catch up on. The next reading plan I have to mention that I have for 2024 is to finish majority of my self-destructing TBR. I feel like I have not been prioritizing my self-destructing TBR as much as every other challenge, like the Pop Sugar Reading Challenge or the 12 Friends Recommend Me 12 Books Challenge. So I want to be able to prioritize this one. I believe that the self-destructing TBR expires in March of 2024, so I have some time. I have a few months to catch up on some of the self-destructing books, but I have DNF'd a few out of that pile so far, and I've lost interest in a few. So we'll see how I go with that one, but I'm gonna try to get through it, and I'm gonna try to review the last stack that I posted eventually. The next 2024 reading plan I'm currently working on is my series TBR. I personally love compiling a series TBR every year, especially because my birthday is like the end of October and then Christmas is in December, obviously. So a lot of the time when I'm receiving gifts, they happen to be books that are within a series, or they just happen to be like a full series in general, and I just like pop them onto the yearly TBR. Or some other long book series that I purchased after my tax return, like the Savage Land series and the Deliciously Dark Fairy Tale series. Both of those series I believe I put on my series TBR, and I read both of them this year. I'm so happy that I did. I honestly cannot wait to see what's in store for next year. This is definitely one of my favorite videos to make. It's definitely one of my favorite lists to make because I love prioritizing series, and I'm often finding that my favorite books of the year, every year, tend to be within series, or tend to be like series chunks. And the final reading plan that I have to mention for 2024 is to just read whatever I want to read. I believe I did say the same thing this time last year when I filmed this. However, I did have the 12 Friends Recommend Me 12 Books Challenge and the Pop Sugar Reading Challenge keeping me down. And I think out of the both of them, the Pop Sugar Reading Challenge was much easier, even though there were 50 prompts. With the 12 Friends Recommend Me 12 Books Challenge, however, I had a very bittersweet experience with that. I don't know if I'm gonna bring that back. I'll have to think about it, honestly. At the end of the day, I know what I like, and I love that I was able to bring people together to give me recommendations. I think that's the best part about it, because you're actually bonding with someone over something that's their favorite. They're sharing the experience with you as well as the book, and I appreciate it. But at the very same time, I did struggle with some of these challenges. I tried, I did my best, and I don't know if I'm going to continue on with it in the new year. I have consistently tried to suggest to myself that I might do a romance version, but I don't know. I realize that even though readers can recommend me different romance novels, it still doesn't guarantee that I'm gonna love them. Even though, yes, romance tends to be a genre that I love and adore, I can't guarantee that I'm gonna love the romantic dynamics in some of these, because I do have friends who read romance novels, but I realize that I don't agree with all of their opinions. There are just simply some romance novel tastes that I do not agree with. So honestly, I don't know at this point whether or not I will participate in the 12 Friends Recommend Me 12 Books Challenge for 2024, but at this point it is looking like a no. Honestly, don't know whether or not I would be willing to spend more time and energy into another reading challenge like this next year, considering that things are looking a little bit busy at the moment on my end. But I don't know, we will see. Maybe things will turn up. But overall, I just want to read whatever I want. I mean, technically I am a mood reader, but I have challenged myself in different ways this year, and I'm very proud of the way that I've challenged myself to expand my horizons, but I think I'm going to stick to mood reading going forward. So I guess that's gonna be it for this video today, book lovers. If you happen to stay to the end of the video, leave me the purple heart emoji. And if you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. And also, I have social medias. I'm at gswizzlebooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle. And finally, I'm at TikTok. I'm at gswizzle on TikTok if you want to follow me there for some bookish content. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace.
Started out with half and I flipped it in a double. Started out with half and I flipped it in a double.